we do a lot of these like A/B testing in our days. We found that just by changing this to a very welcoming, how can I help, with a very human-like voice, you increase the content rate by 5% to 10%. And it's just that simple. Right?
Hello, and welcome to Deep Learning with PolyAI. Today is the final episode in our Anatomy of a Voice Assistant mini-series with PolyAI CTO Shawn Wen. Hi, Shawn.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about speech synthesis. And this part is really interesting because bot builders can get really high-functioning text-to-speech off the shelf today, right? Like it works. So it's more a question of what is the quality that you're looking for and how do you achieve text-to-speech that sounds good or good enough?
Yeah. Yeah, I think speech synthesis, I would say, in the history of conversational systems has been part of the field that is, majority ignored because there are so many problems to solve the language understanding issues, the ability to understanding speech, all the fun things around it. So I think historically, engineers and researchers just focusing on to get things to work rather than how they actually sound like. So in the early version of a lot of the voice assistants, I think I think when we get to Siri, the situation has already become a lot better because Siri is the first, consumer facing voice assistant. They focus a lot to get the brand right because Apple is all about brand, right? But if you talk to some of the older generation of the IVR systems, the nuance systems, even though their customers paying a lot of money for those automations, but the quality is not that great because there wasn't really the focus. It has been focusing on functionality. We are in a new world where generative AI has changed not just text generation, but also audio generation as well. So we are seeing like new generation of this kind of voice synthesis technology become better. However, in PolyAI's eyes, we are still viewing majority of the solutions out there not really good enough because we have a history of obsessing with voice quality. And I guess like this is just like in our DNA is something that, we are still very proud of and that we still continue to do what we do. And yeah, then we started to pay attention to these voice qualities in contact centers way before people start paying attention to. I remember when we talked to one of the Gartner analysts, the feedback, after several sessions of it, the feedback to us was like, you guys are the company that taking the voice quality to like really, really far, like the furthest that they have ever seen in the industry. The concern was like, you probably take it too far that not a lot of people appreciate that. Guess what? Once generative take off, like people start thinking about AI, people realize voice quality is one of the major things they are looking.
Yeah, I think when you like IVR is such a good example, right? Because well, sometimes this happens to me. You have the recorded message now, right? So this call may be recorded for training and monitoring, and you just tune out. You're not listening. You're not paying attention. You know what that message says, and then you get to like you sort of tune back in again, and the same voice is saying, "Press 3 for this," and I'm like, "Oh God, I didn't listen to the first two options. Like I just tuned out because I know that this thing isn't going to say anything useful to me." And so I think we've come so much further in understanding that making an experience that people actually engage with does require that voice to sound really, really good.
Yeah. I remember the first generation of our system, we were using off-the-shelf TTS voice.
Yeah.
It's like in 2017, 2018. Arguably, the technology is not as good as it is today, but it is already a lot better than several years ago, right? Because it started way earlier than generative AI. So we plug the TTS in. Engineers in the team were like, "Oh, that's fine. That voice is good," including myself. And then all the product managers and also Nicola, our CEO, was like, "No, that's wrong. We can't do it that way." So in the end, that voice assistant didn't get deployed. We do a lot of work to come up with an algorithm that allowed us to connecting voice actor voices together to make it sound as nature as possible. And that was the first generation of a system. That's how far we are willing to take the voice quality to.
Yeah, and I think when we were working with voice actors, there was so much direction that you could give. So you'd get a recording back from somebody, and well, actually, I think one of the things was firstly you have to teach the voice actors how to not speak as if it were an IVR, because they knew what the role was
That's right. Yeah.
and they wanted to sound like a robot because that was what people were asking for, right? That had been their job. So we had to say no, 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 no.
That's
Pretend you're working in this restaurant and you're busy and you're answering the phone, right? And then you're like, hello, how can I help?
yeah.
Sound like a person again.
Yeah. Like, our initial system, we studied in the hospitality sector, right?
Yeah.
So voice actor has these issues when they work with contact center. They feel like they have to record these very rigid sentences. However, our clients in the hospitality sector, they just wanted to be warm and welcoming. And, as a scientist, we do actually ask ourselves how important these voice qualities are actually impacting to our customers. So we did actually do in the early stage, we do some, AP testing on several things, like including, TTS voice comparing to a very well recorded human-like voice from voice actors. And then we told them exactly how to behave.
Yeah.
And with that information, or with revealing it's a agent or not an AA agent, right? So we do a lot of these like A/B testing in our days. We found that just by changing this to a very welcoming, how can I help, with a very human-like voice, you increase the content rate by 5% to 10%. And it's just
Yep.
not simple, right? And that just tells you like how important thing. One thing we are combating in the contact center is that because some people get used to these robotic messages. And once they hear that, they immediately know that, no, this is not going to work. I'm not going to talk to it, right? So even though like the voices should be good, but the system should be good, but they are not willing to give it a chance. So that voice quality almost sounds like a real human, gave the voice assistant another chance to be successful, right? If the user started to engage in the natural way in the first turn or second turn, even though the voice assistant didn't pick up things at the third turn, but and then at that point, the user has realized that it's talking to a system. They are probably because they have already gone so far in the conversation, they are probably willing to give the voice assistant another chance. And once they try it, it becomes successful, then the confidence will be built up. And then there's this enough trust between with the user that we can take this conversation to contentment, right? So I think that's a very important thing.
Yeah, and it takes us back to something we spoke about in the SLU episode, right? Which is that a lot of ASR is going to work better if the person actually says more, if they give more context.
Right.
And so you hear this robotic voice and someone would just shout, agent, agent, or you say, why are you calling? And they say, credit card. And it's like, yeah, that's not enough information. Like you're providing the information for a very rigid bot. But if you were to say, oh, my credit card I think it might have been stolen. Am I able to freeze it? You're much better able to help the person. And so you can actually get them through to that second turn of the conversation. So there's something about the quality of the voice and sounding human that enables people to engage in the way that gets the technology what it wants without the person feeling like they were being forced to change their behavior.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's just super important to consider that aspect of the human perception, right?
Right.
In the conversation, in order where you should progress as far as possible, you need to understand human as much as possible so that, the human don't feel frustrated and wanted to drop off. In those conversations, the human also feels like the bot is genuine or actually doesn't sound like robotic so that they don't feel like, at some point they also drop out of the call because of their voice quality. So we do actually think that, all these aspects are important as well in order to actually build a really successful voice assistant with a high conversion rate.
Yeah, I think my theory is that there's going to be a day when you hear the robotic voice answer the phone and you think, oh, thank God, it's a robot. It's going to understand me. It's going to get me what I want, right? And we're going to revert back and we're going to be like, oh, give us those terrible TTS voices again, because they let people know that it was AI, right? That there was something else behind it.
Yeah.
But until we get to that point, we still have to focus on, I guess, delivering voice experiences that something we say quite a lot at PolyAI is that we want to create, we don't want to trick customers into thinking that they're talking to a person, but we want to enable them to forget that they're talking to a robot, right? So they can actually do what they need to do.
Yeah. But I think, in the end of the way, right, when, the really good voice quality doesn't really means that, you are trying to deceive the customers that, you are a
Yeah.
good person. It's really about giving that voice assistant that kind of human level trust to the customers,
Yeah.
willing to engage with it. Because, the system would continue to improve. And I think the regulation, once it comes in, you will actually change the entire landscapes as well. Because
Yeah.
in some countries, you probably have to review your voice as assistant anyway. But regardless of whether it's a bot or not a bot, whether, you are trying to trick the customer into it, I think all we would agree is that interacting with a more human sounding voice assistant will be ultimately the right thing to do anyway.
Yeah.
Because we all like that human touch. Despite the fact that in the future, I'm probably talking into automatic voice assistant over the phone because the contact center will be highly automated in the future. I still would like to prefer to talk to a more human-like bot than a robotic bot, right?
We'll see. Maybe my future my future and your future may be quite different there. So we'll see who wins.
Yeah.
I think when we were talking about this previously as well, you said something quite interesting about how, because a lot of what we've spoken about so far is like a psychology problem, right? It's a user engagement problem. It's not necessarily an engineering problem. And so when you have a team working on this stuff, like we did at the beginning, right, where you have your machine learning engineers and they hear the TTS and they're going, yeah, that's fine. That, it does the job. It's good because I know what TTS is like and I know this is a good one. But then people like me, like marketing, come in and they say, no, I don't want it to sound like this. I want it to have a Scottish accent and I want it to be friendly and all of this stuff. And I think it just highlights the importance of having the right people on the team. Like this isn't, and this goes for the whole voice assistant build, right? It's not purely an engineering problem.
Correct. Yeah. And then I think, that's why I think we have been quite, since we care about this voice quality very early on, we have already, we started to think about about this aspect of the dialogue to design quite a lot.
Yeah.
Those dialogue designs, it's not just about the traditional sense of what kind of messages you should say, and also how do we actually navigate those entire customer journeys in the contact center. But it's also about the quality of a voice that, in that particular flow, what should a voice assistant sound like? We had some more more sensitive customer use cases where it's the bereavement use cases, right? Where actually the customer lost someone, and because there's someone have some saving with that particular bank,
Yeah.
wanted to get what they wanted to know how do they do with it, right? So I think that is a perfect scenario. I mean, when we started that scenario, we were freaking out. We were like, do we actually want robots to deal with these kind of use cases? Because it feels very inhumane in that sense. But once we carefully put in the effort to design crafting the experiences, we have seen some codes that just phenomenal. And, that's better than a human would do. And I was actually quite proud of that use case actually.
Yeah, I think that's incredible, and it's really important, right? And it's something that a lot of companies come to us, and that's their big concern, because you don't want to have this sensitive use case where somebody says, something terrible has happened, and the voice assistant replies with this chipper, like, "Great, I can help with that." Like, it's not appropriate.
Exactly.
So you need to be able to design these conversations in that way. So Shawn, we've talked about this and we know there are some pretty good TTS voices out there, but some of the, let's just say some of the big cloud providers, perhaps, some of their TTS is still not very good.
That's right. Yeah. And, I had a lot of these conversations with some of our partners, especially NVIDIA guys, because they have been pushing a lot of these open source models. And then I
Yeah.
have been into them like, hey, why you guys are not investing in TTS as much as, like, for example, they invest a lot on the speech recognition. I think all the NVIDIA models on the open source arena, they are probably like, 9 out of 10 best performing models are from the NVIDIA now. So they have been invested a lot in the speech technology, but not in the TTS front. I was talking to them like, why you guys are not investing as much as you should on the ASR front, on the TTS front instead.
Yeah.
What they told me is that it's a very conscious decision to make. It's because, I mean, you probably heard about this, Scarlett and Johnson's, social issues with OpenAI, right? It's exactly that kind of scenario because this technology has become so good these days that you can almost just listen to a one clip of your audio and then just synthesize your voice, right? Like it's very vivid, very human-like in a way. That is, it's crazy, right? And I think because of that, I think some of these are really big tech names or companies. They choose not to push too much on those fronts because that would just potentially associate their brand names with some other, misuse use case
Oh, interesting.
on a what. That's one of the reasons, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at Google Cloud TGS, for example, like, we never actually use them in production, but we use it as a fallback in case our, system didn't actually work well. But you were surprised, you were surprised that, Google, I think, was a research powerhouse. But on the speech synthesis from their quality has not been very great. I like to joke that, around is that they have a lot of these different voice selections, but all of them sounds like from the same family. Is that they're kind of similar to each other? And I think I talked to some of the people work there as well. It's just because that, there are just limitations of data they can use to train.
Yeah.
Because they need to be compliant, they need to be, have a fair use policy. And that's like the limitations of the cloud providers, right? Because
Yeah.
voice footprint is more sensitive. It's, more considered as like personal information and less sort of things. Imagine if I clone your voice, if you set up some voice biometric somewhere with your bank, I can
Yeah.
hack into this system with your voice, right?
Yeah. Wow. That's scary.
Yeah. To that, I think because of that reason, it's we're not seeing a lot of like good cloud vendors in a lot there. And on the other hand, we saw the newer generation companies pushing the boundary of this voice quality because that's literally one thing they do. And like, companies like 11 Labs, PolyAI, their quality is actually a lot better. Just
Yeah.
because they probably train on all the data they can find online.
Yes. Oh. And they have some really great features, which again, I think comes back to this sort of whose role is the voice quality in building a voice assistant. Because I think with 11 Labs, and I know with our internal models that we've been playing around with,
Yeah.
you can record yourself saying something to get the tone right. To say, I don't want you to say, how can I help? I want you to say, how can I help? Or whatever. And again, this is something that me in a brand role, I mean, it's good that we're, working on the same thing here. Because if we were in this enterprise organization, right, you'd be building it and I'd be saying, no, Shawn, I wouldn't. And enunciate exactly like this.
Yeah.
And so having that collaboration is really important.
Yeah. We are seeing a lot of our enterprise customers as well. Like, they are not happy about the synthesized voice.
Right.
They wanted to have control. They wanted to be, speaking slower, faster.
Yeah.
They want to be, higher pitch. They wanted to change the tone they are saying. So I think those kind of controls would inevitably need to be provided to the enterprises.
Yeah.
I think, we are starting to see a lot of features around that. And, we also put in a lot of effort to actually, making sure that our in-house solution have those kind of configurability as well. Just like all every part of the system components we are doing. I think serving enterprises, that level of control is needed. Not saying that everyone needs the control. Like a lot of people
Yeah.
are actually quite chill. They just wanted to actually work to a certain degree, and then they just wanted to, forget about it. But I think there are quite a lot of people focusing a lot on different aspect of the system. And I think as a vendor in the market, we just need to serve all their requirements like that.
Yeah, and I think there's a real opportunity here. I mean, what the work that we're doing at PolyAI, and other, voice assistants are enabling brands to have a voice over the phone in the same way that they have, a tone of voice on the website and the app, the same way that, you might have a certain person doing your voiceovers on your adverts, and the way that you speak there. So really being able to create this brand voice,
Yeah.
um, is something that is becoming possible in a really exciting way.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, you are completely right. It actually in a lot of in some of the industry sectors, clients are already thinking about that way.
Yeah.
Like I remember when we first talked to our first casino clients in the US, right? They have a lot of presence in Texas.
Cool.
They the the engagement, was very, I wasn't in those engagement, but I was actually hearing a lot of my colleagues talking about this. Is that we try to pitch them how good our language understanding is. We pitch them, how good, no matter what kind of accents, the system can pick it up, and the system would be there, 24/7, pick up the phone, etc., etc. They're not interested in all that. The only thing that the person was interested was that, can you avoid a student speaking Texas accent, right? And then specifically, you have to start with the conversation, say, hooray,
Yeah.
howdy, right? Yeah, howdy. So just like a very different, because like they consider that as part of their brand, right?
Yeah.
For some of these hospitality.
Yeah. I remember we went really heavy handed in that example. We went way over the top Texan. I'm not even gonna like quit on you for trying, but I'm not even gonna go there. We were very like hee haw cowboy about it. And the client was definitely like, well, that's not our brand, but we can see how far you can take this. Okay.
Exactly.
We can find
In our typical engagement now, right, we would always present customers at least three voices for them to run. And this is basically based on what we understand about the customer brand and what they would like. So they would be able to, change into different voices if they don't like it, right?
Yeah.
But I think having those kind of journey is actually very important. We are One thing that's why this is become more and more important is that we are seeing a lot of the customers, marketing team and branding team are getting involved as well. Especially, I mean, primary reason is because of Gen AI, but also like, they are applying Gen AI to contact centers and they have the voice. So they are also wanted to get involved in that. So I think that aspect I see is like, definitely the future. And then that's like how the people would start to expect that, hey, the voice quality need to be as good as possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing that we did touch on earlier, but maybe worth going back to is
Yeah.
this idea of ethics, especially when it comes to voice cloning. So if you're a team in an enterprise, in charge of building something like this or in charge of buying something like this, how should you be thinking about ethics?
Yeah. I think for us, right, we do actually invest into voice cloning technology. And also, yeah, I think the primary thing is we are not planning to release that for a third party to be able to, clone their voices, because that would open up the Pandora's box. Because who would actually use it to do actually, to do like things that are not supposed to be done. A lot of I mean, to be honest, I think also very important is that the voice actor community are also aware of these kind of issues, right? To them, it's not just about ethical, whether you use my voices to do certain things that you said you are going to do, but not the other things that you are not supposed to be doing, right? So we have a lot of these. We have been working on back and forth on these contracting element with voice actors because that is a very that's a very strong community. I think a lot of people talking to
Yeah.
each. And if you want to find someone with like really good voices, that's where that's exactly the community you can work for. But they are also aware of the challenges posed to them, not just about ethical issues, but also like, their future, etc. We do actually work with some voice actors. They are a lot. They are very forward looking. They are saying like, "Hey, I think this is the future,
Yeah.
but I wanted to make sure that in that future, it's if you're going to use my voice in that future, I'm going to be part of that future too." So we structure these like revenue sharings and those kind of like. Also, we structure in some ways is hey, like are you happy for your voice to be used for third parties,
Yeah.
or clients? If you don't, that's fine. Are you happy for your voice to be used in the hospitality sectors, the utility sectors, that particular sectors, right?
Yeah.
So they also have a say on their own brand and their awareness. Like, hey, like where do I want my voice to be proposed to? And of course, that if you expose more, you can probably get more return from it. But then at the same time, if you wanted to have a control, that's completely up to you as well.
Yeah, I think it's offering that scalability to something that, you can only take so much voice acting work at a time. But
Right.
also you were doing it on this one-to-one basis. You've been making these decisions yourself as you went along, and you want to make sure that you retain control over that.
That's right. And I think in the end of the day, right, the way we are thinking about working with voice actors and also applying these latest speech synthesis technology is not to replace them and out of the job. Because we do think, because I know our obsession about voice quality
Yeah.
would not go easily just say, oh, like we clone a voice and it's done. It's never going to be the case. We wanted to continue to work with the voice actor, right? And the voice cloning model has its own limitations. Like technically, it's still not as good as the real humans. Like we done some internal surveys about a lot of people listening to a lot of different voices is synthesized comparing to real humans. Real humans, here, I think we were doing like 1 to 5 rating of the quality.
Yeah.
Uh, I think the AI voice is probably considered consistently rated at 3.5, and the human is actually about 4.5, right? So
Yeah.
there's still a gap. Like again, it is subjective, but there's always going to be gap, right? So we do actually wanted to maintain a good relationship with the voice actor community, so that whenever we need their help to create like crafted voice recording that is actually very on brand, that
Yeah.
they're there to help us, right? So it's going to be a partnership relationship.
Yeah. Excellent. So I think to kind of summarize, a lot of this part of, the sort of spoken language understanding in ASR is going to require a significant investment from an engineering team to really maximize that, really make sure that you're getting the best quality understanding of what customers are saying on the phone. Then you need to have, again, the same sort of resources to really support you with your LLMs to make sure that they are behaving correctly, that they're not hallucinating, that they're able to move you through certain transactions. And then when it comes to speech synthesis, it it would be easier, I guess, to just plug in a Google TTS, and hey, it'll work, it'll be okay, but it is going to sound robotic, and this is where you really need to think about design. This is where you really need to think about how you want it to sound, your brand, and make sure that you're bringing in the right people from across the company to really maximize that. Don't just chuck it on your engineers' shoulders because it's a brand problem as well as an engineering problem.
Yeah, yeah. Like uh, I would like there's a way I try to describe this, and then talking to a lot of our prospects and clients, and even internal teams, is that hey, as a developer, you have spent so much time polish your voice assistant to understand every accents, understand every languages, and then not to hallucinate and make sure that there's a proper guardrail in place. You know, if you have already spent so much time just get it right, get it to a perfect stage. Just also thinking about the voice quality.
Yeah.
See, the brand you wanted to project your, your whatever your brand, your company, to like, think about that particular brand identity. Choose the right voice. Don't just pick one of the random speech synthesize, because guarantee you it's not going to be good enough in
Yeah.
that new world where every voice assistant sounds like a real human.
Yeah.
That's definitely going to be the future. So if you have already spent so much effort, that final mile, just like
Yeah.
finish it properly.
Yeah. It's the cherry on top. Like, it's going to make all of this stuff come together in a really nice way. And likewise, a really great voice with, LLMs that are running wild and really bad ASR is not going to save you there either. It's a case of all of this stuff working together.
That's right.
Cool. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for taking so much time to sit down with me and talk us through all of the different pieces of making a voice assistant. I've certainly learned a lot. I hope that anyone listening to this podcast has learned a lot too. Um, Thank you once again, and we will see you on future episodes of Deep Learning. Take care. Bye.